All right, kids, when people ask, who is your favorite president? I usually tell them that I don't root for enslavers and war criminals. That's who they are.
Our money look like baseball cards with slave owners on.
They put themselves on currency and mountains and build libraries in their own image. Sure, some presidents are better than others, but that doesn't mean I like them. I don't know them personally. I am interested in personality, but I'm more into policy. It would take a lot for me to actually be a supporter beyond giving them my vote. I've never endorsed any politician at any level, let alone campaign for them, but that's kind of a cop-out on my part because in this day and age, someone can approach you with a camera and a microphone, only when that elected official messes up, mind you, and go, hey, what's up with your boy?
Does he have a problematic past? Yes.
He's the best candidate by far, and probing into the minutia of his personal relationships when you don't do that for any other candidate is ridiculous.
But I would rather have a redemption story than somebody telling you how wonderful they are.
Is there anything that would change your mind at this point?
Absolutely not.
If we want folks that are representing us from the working class, they're not necessarily going to have a groomed and perfect political record coming into the politics.
We're going to focus on Graham Platner, the now former Democratic U.S. Senate candidate out of Maine. He recently announced that he was suspending his bid after a woman, a former girlfriend, accused him of sexual assault in 2021. He denies these allegations, and now leftists and progressives got some questions to answer. See, that scandal, in addition to his past Reddit post and extramarital affair, and having a Nazi tattoo but covering it up with something that I'm not certain is a whole lot better, had to have been known to those Maine voters I showed earlier. Even with that, it seems like the people in his victim's life would vote for him anyways if they had the chance.
I have friends who feel that way, and that's been a hard pill to swallow. And I guess I need to not ask, potentially. Maybe I need to not ask in order to not care what they do. I understand.
The bar is on the floor. With that said, I was going to ask, where is the line? I guess I want to know if there is one. Yes, we need more progressive voices in politics, and Susan Collins needs to go. I want the Senate. Can't believe I just put it that way. You'll see why later. Congress ought to be younger, and yeah, Palestine should be free, and I don't want tax dollars going to Israel. Access to free healthcare and education are long overdue. Higher wages and labor unions would be nice, although, is this embattled, embittered veteran truly the embodiment of the change middle America wants to see in the U.S. while also wanting to bolster military arms and recruitment? Is he the best/easiest way to get these things? To what end? At what cost? The stamps that establishment Democrats use to write and send strongly worded letters to Trump and MAGA is nothing to them. Now they'll spare no expense at trying to rid their party of the few socialists and preventing entry to communists. Nobody's perfect, and sacrifices are in order. But look, we tell Republicans and American evangelicals that they wouldn't let Jesus and his brown self into the country. Well, the left wouldn't elect him. Shouldn't have healed that Roman cop's ear. And I hope that colonizer can hear me. With that said, you would vote for Barabbas, and I would too. Why though? Granted, a lot of folks still feel this way.
I don't even look at their political policies. I just look at their character. And I saw one thing on the campaign trail. He actually just picked a black baby up and kissed him. Come here, little nigger baby. Mwah! I just kissed him. I said, I like that.
This won't be an I told you so video from a fellow leftist progressive because I haven't talked about this man. I'm not piling on. But the evidence that either the senile or a supervillain could get through a primary as long as they're a white guy from a small town is really piling up. Too many overlooked red flags for green initiatives. Let's get started. Graham Platner was born in Blue Hill, Maine, raised by an attorney who graduated from an Ivy League school and an entrepreneur who ran a coffee shop, amongst other things. They were able to send him to a private boarding school in Connecticut for high school. B-Rabbit would have murked this dude for that amount of privilege, but Platner was expelled. He then graduated from John Baptist Memorial High School, where he wrestled and was voted most likely to start a revolution. When he was 18, he heckled President George W. Bush about the U.S.'s involvement in Iraq. But then he joined the Marine Corps and served tours in that war. That's like teasing Ronald McDonald for his ice cream machines always being broken, but then fighting Grimace over a McFlurry. He would go on to attend, but not graduate from, George Washington University. After the military, he became a small business owner and got involved with local politics and activism. The Prince of Sullivan, Maine. Then, his life got twisted upside down.
Because you were recruited, right? Because they saw a video of you.
Yep.
And
Somebody saw a video of me talking about fighting a Norwegian salmon farm in our area. And they were like, that guy seems well-spoken. Maybe we should go talk to him. And they came to my house and they said that we should run for U.S. Senate. And my wife and I were like, that's the most insane thing we've ever heard. Please get out of our house. And then they came back a few days later with more of like a fleshed out plan. And at that point, we're like, oh my God, I mean, it's still insane, but there's something to it.
Graham Platner was recruited by a couple, Daniel Moraff and his fiancée, Leanne Fan, who claimed to have looked through thousands of prospects before coming across one of Platner's videos. They were also impressed by the fact that he had donated to Bernie Sanders. And evidently, they didn't know much else about him.
At this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Platner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back, other stuff we didn't.
Moraff, a Yale Law School grad, and Fan, who went to Harvard and UC Berkeley, had originally met while working for Senator Bernie Sanders in 2020. And they admitted that they were going to go with another Mainer who was going to be Platner before Platner. However, at the last minute, they discovered that there was a skeleton in the closet that wasn't true that we would have had to explain. Politico said the pair decided to go in a different direction, literally, to Sullivan, Maine. And can you imagine what they found out about this dude to make them change their minds? He must have had Skeletor's bones in his closet. Anyways.
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was your thinking there?
Agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country.
Morris and Rebecca Katz, no relation, no seriously, and their consulting firm, Fight Agency, also jumped in, supposedly. They helped the likes of Zoran Mamdani, Greg Kaser, and Dan Osborne. And the ads must have worked. Platner won his primary with 72% of the vote. The point is, though, the probably rich people who positively never worked a blue-collar job a day in their lives propped up this Ulysses S. Grant smell-alike borderline edgelord using a working-class platform because they knew it would work on white liberals and the center-left in Maine. And that method needed help, and got it with this messenger.
There are people in the United States Senate right now who are not saints. I can tell you that. Is he a saint? I guess not. I don't know too many saints here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Meanwhile, we are not talking about why one person in America owns more wealth than the bottom 53%. How often do we discuss that on CNN?
Can we talk about both? I mean,
of course you could talk about both.
Sex scandals are one thing. How about physical, mental, emotional, or intellectual fitness? Where's the line there? Is there one? Senator Mitch McConnell could either be dead or in a vegetative state as we speak. I mean, sure, all of us have had 20-minute phone conversations with the Mitch, even though we can't call him on command when asked to do so. Come on. Don't be ridiculous. And it wasn't that long ago that Joe Biden's mental capacity was constantly called into question and the topic of conversation. Since we didn't want a fascist in the Oval Office, millions were willing to suck it up. His performance, or lack thereof, during that 2024 presidential debate was the last of many soggy paper straws that came before it. Joe still believes he could have won. He could have. Amid jokes that his wife or others would run cover for him or puppet him if he earned a second term. There is precedent for that. None of this is new. On October 2nd, 1919, during the second half of his second term in office, President Woodrow Wilson suffered a massive stroke. His entire left side was paralyzed. It was nothing for him to get and be tired. He slurred his speech. He found it hard to concentrate on a conversation. Does any of this sound familiar? Others, especially his second wife, Edith, would have to tap him to get him to pay attention from time to time. Mark Rubio's current job. Edith was essentially the president for a while when the Treaty of Versailles was being discussed. This famous picture was faked. His woman pretty much propped him up to show the haters a photo of her, getting stuff done. I bet he would have won another term if he could get more than 2. See FDR. Wilson's main op, who was trying to spell out the president's ailments, Senator Albert B. Fall of New Mexico, was later caught taking bribes and became the first cabinet secretary ever sentenced to jail. He was worried about the wrong sentence. Still an issue in politics at present. And hey, real quick, President and regulator Warren G. Harding, Ohio's own, had a mistress that was 31 years younger than him. He made a baby with that lady. In her tell-all book, The President's Daughter, Nan Britton revealed that Harding's secret child with her was probably conceived on his Senate office couch, which is why it leans a little bit to the left. Unlike Harding, his politics, not his. Did you know that Harding was prone to have sex in a White House coat closet? Also, History.com says that he had a code name for his penis. It was Jerry. The example they gave was, "Wish I could take you to Mount Jerry." And is that the best he could have done? Call that thing General Sherman or something, because it's making everything hot down south. Wilson and Harding's administrations were back to back, by the way. None of this sex stuff was newsworthy back then. Barry Sanders should be jealous of how much John F. Kennedy's Secret Service protected him so that he could keep putting balls in the end zone. Not that the media was even necessarily trying to report on these matters. That is, until Clinton did not have sexual relations with that woman and Trump grabbed that Access Hollywood host by the Billy Bush. And are we being told by Graham Platner's campaign, Maine voters, and the anti-establishment Dems that this material makes candidates more marketable? That's almost as dumb as this.
The one thing I know about Republicans, when we had a very bad candidate and found out, we didn't vote for that person. Right. We walked away.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. When Matt Gaetz came forward, we got rid of him.
Yeah.
Mad convenient for Kevin McCarthy to bring up someone on his side of the aisle that he already had beef with. Former Representative Matt Gaetz and his alleged interest in high school age girls. And not the leader of his party or current or close to it Congress people like Chuck Edwards, Corey Mills, Tony Gonzalez, Anthony Despacito, William Timmons, and Jeff Duncan, just to name a few of the salacious scandals. Then there's the Max Millers of the world.
A lot of bad individuals who are rising up in politics right now. It includes Graham Platner. He's got to go. But the fact that you just sit here and said that nobody cares that Max Miller beat his wife is highly alarming.
We're not here to talk about Max Miller. We're here to talk about Graham Platner. I think we got to be
talking about all of it. Because if we're not policing this conduct from people, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it's not right.
My word, we can talk about both. I'm beginning to believe that our system of checks and balances is so that we can have an equal amount of mother in the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Brett Kavanaugh received a lifetime appointment as an associate justice of the Supreme Court after sexual assault allegations. And if you didn't notice, there ain't no brothers up in here. Oh, no, wait, me from the future. I know there are examples. Don't literally fade to black.
I, Clarence Thomas.
I, Clarence Thomas.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill. Got it. Okay. Mark Robinson lost his race to become governor of North Carolina, but I honestly don't think it was due to his abortion hypocrisy or wanting to sleep with his sister-in-law. I don't remember what the thing was. Herschel Walker, wow. Again, we're actually sounding like these people.
So I don't care if Herschel Walker paid to abort endangered baby eagles. I want control of the Senate.
Okay, well, there aren't black leftists that are doing any of this. There are black, actual blue collar, working class, non-APAC backed, of course, progressives who can be sold in these well thought out commercials and campaigns aimed at Gen Z and don't have checkered past, but the average American still finds them approachable. I had to look them up though. I'm interested to see if they get the same motion in black districts as their white counterparts do in white ones. I can't help but wonder how the vote would have turned out if Eric Swalwell didn't drop out of California's governor race and resign as a U.S. representative. Also, Both Nancy Pelosi and Ro Khanna asked him to do so. Put that on there. His career survived an investigation into his dealings with that suspected Chinese spy, Fang Fang. How would the Dems justify him again in front of the GOP? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to backdoor respectability politics into this episode. What the right and conservative commentators have to say should be of no concern. Yet, shouldn't there be a specific standard which has to be met that can be good enough for cable news networks, but not representative democracy?
I think that his relationship with his wife is his relationship with his wife.
But it's not just the wife. Another mistress is talking. She says she slept with Nipple in 2021 while he was engaged to a woman different than his current wife.
Jesse Watters cheated on his wife and left her for that younger Fox staffer. The guy he replaced, Tucker Carlson, was ousted in the midst of a sexism and harassment lawsuits. The guy he replaced, Bill O'Reilly, was fired after sexual harassment allegations. How these three men can get away with being snug and non-self-reflective is beyond me. We treat elected officials like athletes, celebrities, and entertainers. We shouldn't be fans of these people. We treat athletes, celebrities, and entertainers like they're infallible depending on the moves, media, movies, or music they make. We turn a blind eye and still lend an ear if they're on our team. In politics, we call that partisanship. I respect the separate the art from the artist argument. I do. To a certain point. Am I supposed to forget that Kanye was on some black Nazi Chicago Confederate type shit because he made Graduation? How do I know I'm not funding a new KKK mask by listening to Big Brother? That sample from Prince was so good. Truth be told, I allow myself to play last call when I'm sad about my career. I remember when, hours after Jonathan Majors was convicted of reckless assault in the third degree and harassment of his ex-girlfriend, Disney/Marvel fired him. He could no longer be Kang the Conqueror. And up until that point, he had not only been Kang, but he was He Who Remains and Pharaoh Ramatut and Scarlet Centurion. And I wanted to see this thing through. Picture an Avengers movie. They're fighting a variant of Kang and doing whatever it takes to win. It took the duration of an entire movie, blood, sweat, tears, to beat him. Perhaps a little bit of a tear of Tiana Paris's suit side. Small peek. Not too much. And a few seconds later, a different version of Kang walks in with the foreknowledge that he would lose. In fact, he scripted it this way so that Steve, Tony, and Thor would be too tired. Man, he's at the end of time and he knows all and has seen all. He paved the road. And this sets up the next Avengers movie. Count me in. Do you want some of this? I wanted that. I was even willing to have Kang recasted. Where's Coleman Domingo when you need him? Full disclosure, then I found myself looking up what really happens with third degree assault, and that's a bad place to be in. Back in 2004, Josh Brolin was arrested after his wife, Diane Lane, called the LAPD and alleged that he had assaulted her. She declined to press charges and the case was dropped. He was arrested 2 more times for alcohol-related incidents. And in the last 2 decades, he's been decently forthright with what allegedly happened. And I'm only aware of this because I was trying to rationalize Jonathan Majors' return to the MCU and figure out if racism was involved in their decision. What's the difference between Jonathan and Josh? Convictions? Timing? One happened while they were under contract with Marvel and Disney, and the other was before. Okay. Hey, we love a redemptive arc. It's part of the hero's journey. However, Graham Platner was never really good. Military deployment and discharge and all. He blamed some of his shortcomings on PTSD and a subsequent drinking problem, which is a thing. But he's a villain. One that a certain segment of the population views as a likable, personable, relatable antagonist. They're not one-dimensional big bads anymore. Not in a Magneto kind of way that you can understand because he was a Holocaust survivor and is a minority as a mutant, but takes the superiority thing too far. But in a, yo, Thanos, you've come around to the idea that you want to double the resources instead of killing people, which you also like to do, but nobody's asking you to sacrifice a woman, let alone anybody, in order to do so. Kind of way. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Magneto was right, period. Thanos was right about wanting to get rid of half the people. That's it. looking at electoral maps and exit polls. Graham Platner wasn't even anti-racist or anti-capitalist. It didn't matter to European Americans. Can the racial and ethnic majority of this country within or near my ideology admit that, for example, John Fetterman was better than Dr. Oz, but he's still bad, right? So willing to settle. Progressive policies are popular in these United States and we can't find a well-to-do non-ne'er-do-well to promote them? A Tiana Paris-looking black woman can't draw a distinction between explaining Medicare for all or single-payer healthcare options where applicable? I need a valid excuse as to why. Black and brown candidates on the center left almost have to feature pristine personal lives and personalities. The Obamas and Mamdanis of the world present themselves in such a way that right-wing media talks about what they wear. They have little on them and their past, so they start making stuff up. Just like so many I've already named on both sides, Graham Platner will have an opportunity in the future to stage a comeback. Wave around a newfound adherence to Christianity, get a best black friend or something, adopt a gay or they child. He'll be well within the white left good graces again. Until then, I recognize the spot and space that we're in. Midterms are coming. The last 2 years, hopefully, of Trump's regime can lose steam if he does not have the House and Senate. And we're almost within striking distance of choosing a 2028 presidential nominee to combat Vance or Trump, if I'm being real. Multiple wars and genocides have been or will be raging for years with no end in sight. And I've told my wife that if she ever saw me campaigning for anyone at any time, then there must be something wrong because I need an attitude adjustment. Pathetic. Evidently, I would have to find this person though. We're gonna be all right.